Hi, this is Dan here. I hope you're doing really well today. In this lesson, I'm going to show you 5 really simple steps that you can take to improve your bass technique. The idea is to get your technique so good that you forget about it so you can just focus on the music. Let's dive straight in. The first step is to ask yourself a question, and that is, what bass techniques do I actually need? Now, this depends on what type of a bass player you are or you want to be. Let me explain. So if you want to be a session player like I kind of did when I was a kid, then you need a bit of slap. You do need a bit of plectrum. Someone asks you to play something with a plectrum, you need to know how to use that. And obviously very good basic finger style. If you want to be like a progressive metal player, you might need a plectrum, you might need some intricate techniques, same with jazz fusion. But if you don't want that and you want to be like a soul bass player, then it's just really more on groove and timing and just good finger style. So I would really recommend that you define that before you go learning techniques that you're hearing on Instagram and seeing and that look amazing, but you might not actually need it. Not knocking those techniques. If you do want to play like that, then those are the techniques you need to learn. Watch this. If I go like... Very simple finger style with real basic muting. You didn't hear any strings ringing out because I was in control of them. That's muting. Anyone in any style needs to get that sorted out. Plus hand shifts you see a lot. And I would recommend that most people start off with just a very good basic finger style. Let me add some of this in. Listen to this. Vibrato at the end. I did some hammer-ons. I did some pull-offs, which is kind of the opposite. Did some slides. Bit of faster finger style. Now those are expressive techniques. I also played a ghost note. Those techniques are used in practically every style of bass playing, and I think everyone needs to learn those. So this first section is just about working out which individual bass techniques that you need to add into your toolbox. Then you can work from that. Next, you know what techniques you want. It's now your job to figure out the mechanics of those. What I mean is just how your fingers work. So let's just take a 2-octave G natural minor scale like this. Played that way, I'm using 1 finger per fret, which is not the only way to play, but it's where you line up your fingers on consecutive frets. In this case, first finger on the 3rd fret, and then the 2nd on the next fret, 3rd on the next fret, little finger on the next fret. And I'm following that. When I get to the F, I'm shifting. I'm doing that really smooth hand shift that I was talking about, you see all the time in bass playing. And I'm just trying to play it smoothly from the lowest note to the highest note. I've got no metronome. I'm just working on making it sound good, not fretting in the wrong place, making my fingers nice and curled. The bass, I'm holding it in a way that is not going to hinder my technique. Neck slightly angled up, slightly away from the back of the chair, and everything is comfortable. That's what you're working on. So I've got no metronome here, and I'm just working on simple finger style as an example. What if I had a more complicated technique like this? Now, this is what something I mess around with. I don't really use it live so much. But here, I'll just show you an example of how you might slow down, that's key, slowing down, and break down a complicated technique. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting my thumb, and let's do this on the 5th fret of the D string. This principle will work with any hard technique. Do it slowly. So I'm going down with the thumb, almost using my thumb like a plectrum. Okay. So coming to rest in this case, on the G string. Okay. Then I'm coming up. So it is a bit like that Victor Wooten double thumbing kind of technique. And as I'm coming up, I've got my index finger behind the thumb. And I'm catching that as well, so you get 3 notes. And you get this kind of like... That rhythm is a 16th note triplet, and you hear that rhythm a lot in very impressive, hard-sounding things. So in order to get that technique together, I would not use a metronome. I would just explore it a little bit, okay, because it's alien to me and it feels difficult. So not worried about timing. I'm not worried about getting it perfect, because it's not going to be. Fingerstyle for you may be at the same stage now where that feels difficult. Fast fingerstyle. So for me, I'm going down, up, down like this. There comes a point where you can just do it like that, but it takes a long time. But the point of this little section here is the mechanics have to be perfect. So you've just got to repeat it over and over again, whatever it is in this case. And it can actually be harder to do it slower, so just do it over and over again. With a bit of practice, your coordination will be better, the neural pathways in your brain will form, and you'll be getting that new technique down. The next section is to work on your speed. So you've got your mechanics down and you worked on that slowly. That is key. You have to make the technique as perfect as possible. If you jump into doing it too fast too soon, there will be errors in there that you won't catch, and your errors will just follow you along in your bass playing path. So get the technique down in the mechanics sort of section, and then you work on speed. So if I go back to the G natural minor scale I was playing, this is another universal truth that works for any style, any bass technique, and it's to work on economy of motion. It's getting rid of wasted energy, wasted movements, and really it's about keeping both your hands and all the fingers closer to the fretboard. So watch this. It's pretty boring. I'm just going up and down a scale, but I've got my one finger per fret technique. It's not the only way to play, but in this example, it's the way I'm playing. I've got my fingers nice and curled, you can see here, and I'm keeping them close to the fretboard. In particular, for most people, it will be the little finger, third finger sort of combo there that will be tricky. If you've got any hand injuries, by the way, or arthritis, anything like that, and you can't do this, do not worry. Adapt to the way you can do it. You know, you might go, say you had a terrible accident, you don't have a little finger. I mean, you can still play bass. Only reason I say that is I get the odd email with people that have got injuries. So adapt if you can't do this, but for anyone who can, you're keeping the fingertips close, and they're very uniform. They're doing the same thing. It's like a machine, and you're doing this by concentrating on it slowly. Fingers here, plucking alternately. On the odd time I come down, I'll use the same finger sometimes, so like index, index, that's called raking. But to get speed, you have to be efficient, you have to be doing the correct technique, you have to be doing it from slow to fast. The next point goes hand in hand with the previous one. You've got good technique now, your mechanics are kind of there, but it doesn't mean anything unless you can play in time, especially as a bass player. Our number one job really is to keep the groove going, and that's to do with timing and feel. And this is how you develop that. There are many ways actually, but two big ones are to use a metronome or a drum loop. I'll demonstrate both now. I've got a metronome here going at 120 beats per minute. I'm going to stick with this G minor scale, and there are so many things you can do. I'm going to make a few things up as I go and show you. The fast stuff at the end was 16th notes. Firstly, I just matched the beat with quarter note. Those are 8th notes, and those are 16th. Without a metronome, you don't really know if you're playing exactly bang on in time. So I like to bring that in, and I was just using little scale fragments there. I used 2 octaves earlier. once you learn a pattern, you can make lots of bass lines out of those and exercises, which brings me on to the next point of the drum beat. So I'll do a drum beat now. I'll use the same pattern. You can download that below, by the way. And I'll make something up a little bit more musical. I want to play more musically when I play to drum loops. That's why I like. Do you see what I was doing there? I was actually working on technique, but very much bringing in improvising as well. So I know this lesson is a bass technique lesson, but I also like to make things musical, and I like to work on other aspects of bass playing, like making stuff up, improvising. This obviously helps with jamming as well. I don't think that's a bad thing at all, and I think it's quite easy once you know how. So you've got that shape. And I'm just going up the scale. But in this instance, I'm injecting some rhythms and phrases and doing some different techniques, and that just instantly makes it sound like a bass line rather than a scale exercise. So try that in your practice. You need to know the shape. The whole point of this lesson is the technique, so you definitely, the technique is your means to translate the cool bass lines you got in your head. Without the technique, you're not going to get there. So that's the whole point. So you've got technique, you've got the little shapes that you know sound good, and you've got timing, which is the whole point of this. Last point is to be consistent. So let's just say that you've figured out what techniques you want, your mechanics are really good, you've worked on the speed, you've worked on the timing. That's great, you have one good session like that. Well, that's not enough. It really is all about developing the neural pathways in your brain, and that happens through repetition and being consistent. So you have to develop a practice routine. I would recommend just getting a piece of paper or a practice journal and just writing down what the goal is for that week. You're at 80 beats per minute, so by next week you want 85 beats per minute. Just really, really work on that, and it just needs to be consistent. I think even 5 minutes a day actually of deliberate focused practice on whatever technique it is can work wonders. If you stick to that 5 minutes over a period of a few weeks, the 5 minutes will hopefully turn into 10, which will hopefully turn into 30. But this kind of practice is a little uncomfortable. If you're recording yourself, it won't sound good. If you're learning a new technique, it won't sound good. But if you use some of my videos or any other videos you see, hopefully we'll show you how to play the technique correctly, and then it's up to you to just be consistent, and I promise you, if you push yourself, it's really going to work for you. If you're struggling for bass guitar exercises to work on, I've got this book, and if it's bass techniques and everything to do with hand shifting, note length and fingerstyle playing, there's this book. But thanks very much for watching. I hope you can get something from that and use that in your practice. Now go and check out this bass guitar playlist. I've got loads of bass guitar technique exercises and lessons, all kinds of different techniques in that playlist. Go and have a little scroll, find what you want to learn, and then that's going to be the thing that you're going to take forward for the next week or two, or however long it takes you to get that down. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.